Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're watching us from. So, my my name is Geraldo. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. This activity, this live with Hamza Albakri, uh, it's a part of the week of the Palestinian Studies Week, organized by the International Center of Arabic and Islamic Studies at the Federal University at Sergipe. Uh, this activity, it's first of all, I'd like to thank so much you, Hamza Al-Bakri, for your presence, for being here with us tonight. It's a pleasure for us. It's really great to have this possibility of listening about your research, about your work, and we're excited also and to thank Tabla Publishing House for this partnership. Tabla is one of the most important initiatives that we have in the publishing market in Brazil, particularly regarding Palestinian and literature, Arabic literature in general, poetry. But I would emphasize the role that Tabla has been playing in the publishing of the works of Mahmoud Darwish, Ghassan Kanafani, amongst many other important Palestinian authors. And of course, Moroccan, Lebanese, Syrian, and many other fundamental works for Arabic literature. So it's a pleasure to have also this partnership. And I just would like to introduce, as I said before, this is the second edition of the Palestinian Studies Week, organized here at the northeastern part of Brazil, at the Federal University of Sergipe. Sergipe is the smallest state in Brazil. It's located in the northeastern region, for those who are watching it from outside the country. And it's a week that intends to not only present the research done by the students, the undergrad and the postgrad students that are members affiliated with our center, but also a moment to affirm the role of the universities and the Brazilian universities in what regards the Palestinian, the genocide with the Palestinian population is exposed right now, done by Israel, and the fact that the Brazilian universities have a very important role to play in that, even though in the majority of the situations is still regarding everything we are seeing remains terrible silence on the part of a large sector of the Brazilian academics. So for us, it's a pleasure to have Hamza here. It's a pleasure to organize the second edition of the Palestinian Studies Week. And we invite you also to follow the Instagram of the International Center of Arabic and Islamic Studies, CEAI. And I'd like to inform that also, as a part of this week, this activity is, we will be issuing a certificate for those who participate. So if you, after, it be a link to a form here that the participants can fill up, particularly the students of the university, and they can also obtain the certificate for the participation in this activity as a part of the academic activities organized during this week. So I don't want to take any more other time. I just would like to start by saying that I was reading a piece, Hamza, on the 7th of October now, by a Palestinian writer called Karim Katam from Bethlehem, that he published on the Le Monde. And he started this piece by saying, his text by saying that Gaza is everywhere and at the same time is nowhere. So I would like to take this sentence, as we are witnessing now an ongoing genocide as a part of an ongoing process of more than a 7-decade catastrophe inflicted on the Palestinian population. and to say that here at the International Center of Arabic and Islamic Studies, for us, it's fundamental to think not only in the role of the universities in denouncing that situation, but also in producing and reflecting about the knowledge production system and how Latin America is involved in this dynamics of the knowledge production system in what regards Palestine. So that's also one of the reasons that it's our pleasure to welcome Hamza Albakri here this evening with a discussion related to the theater as an anti-colonial methodology. At our center, we have researchers working and with Palestinian studies in many different methodologies and different fields, as Palestinian football, Palestinian art, Palestinian music, Palestinian cinema. And now we have this opportunity of discussing also the role of Palestinian theater or theater in Palestine. So, ahla wa sahla, Hamza, and here with me, it's my dear friend, my brother, and also one of the co-founders of the International Center, Arturo Hartmann, to whom now I give the word.
Thank you, Geraldo. Thank you for the presentation, for the introduction, for the talk, and talking about the Palestinian Week, the second Palestinian Week. I'll be short. I'll just present Hamza. First of all, it was great to meet Hamza. We were connected to a lot of amazing people from the Exeter Institute, from the Institute for Arabic Islamic Studies in Exeter, and also the European Center for Palestine Studies. So it's a pleasure to have you. So Hamza is doing his PhD, right, through Exeter, and he's doing field in Palestine, and he studies, as Geraldo already introduced a little bit, but he's using theater as a anti-colonial theater as a methodology, or theater as anti-colonial methodology. He will correct me. But looking at how Palestinian youth how the youth is constructing their masculinities under the Israeli settler colonial regime, and also inside, let's say, patriarchal authoritarian regime, also a second layer of oppression, which is the Palestinian Authority. So I'm really excited to hear you. And now I pass the word to Hamza, and after that we can have a discussion, a talk, and me and Geraldo, and also the people in the chat participating.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Geraldo and Arturo, for this introduction. And it's really uplifting and heartwarming to have this, and that we are continuing to talk about Palestine and do work on Palestine, with Palestine, for Palestine, during these times of genocide, of annihilation, that is mainly about a political extermination and about narratives and about destruction of all kinds of existence of Palestinians. Okay. I will try to be short and concise. I know that subject is also complex, and speaking English might be also for me a challenge. So we will try to make our best. I will share my screen with you now to start my presentation. So, yes. You see my presentation, yeah? Okay. Do you see it in full screen? Can you, Arturo or Geraldo, let me know?
No, not yet. We see the presentation, but still.
Yeah. Okay. 1 second. Now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Oh, yes.
My name is Hamza Albakri. and I am a theater practitioner, music practitioner, and also a researcher at the Palestinian Studies Center at the University of Exeter, and I'm a second-year PhD student. I'm speaking to you from Ramallah, Palestine, and also time here is around 1, so I'm normally sleeping at this time. So if I start saying nonsense, please stop me. So I'm here today to talk about my research, which engages with stateless Palestinian masculinities in the colonized West Bank and theater as anti-colonial methodology. So, 76 years ago, our ongoing Nakba started. This genocide we are witnessing in Gaza and all over Palestine started. This apartheid, ecocide, epistemicide, ethnic cleansing, the explosion of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes, the manufacturing of open-air prisons for millions of Palestinians, and the kidnapping of thousands of Palestinians in Israeli prisons began. And yet, for 372 days and 76 years, we have been in constant state of refusing our victimization, dehumanization, and elimination, and continuously fighting against all forms of injustice, not only in Palestine, but everywhere and for everyone. When we say free Palestine, we are asking for the freedom of us all, indigenous people, Black people, people of color, queer, and all other oppressed people against capitalism, racism, imperialism, and white supremacy, and all structures of domination that affect all our lives. So my talk will follow 3 main threads, and I will try to be concise and clear as possible. First, I will set the scene for my research and why I'm focusing on the post-Oslo period, what are its impact on the construction of Palestinian identities, on the future of Palestine, on the current present of Palestinians. Second, I will discuss some preliminary findings of my year-long fieldwork, which also includes my experience of growing up in Palestine for 29 years old. And I will finally discuss the use of theater, mainly community theater and theater of the oppressed, as a research methodology that is anti-colonial, desire-based, and healing-based. So just before diving into the topic, it is essential to highlight that masculinities in Palestine are largely understudied. And when studied, they are mainly studied by white Western researchers, focusing on the role of the Israeli occupation. Moreover, there is little, if non-existent, research on the impact of the creation of the PA on the construction of masculinities in Palestine, which adds on the importance of this research. So, to kick us off, I will start with some quotes from my theater workshops or from interviews I conducted with some Palestinian Authority agents, security forces or whatsoever. I will change the slide. Yes. So, the first quote is from a participant in his 20s in one of my theater workshops in Ramallah. And this was regarding a question I asked, what does it mean for you to grow up as a man under the PA? And this was what he wrote. How does the Palestinian Authority want me to be? It aims for me to be a sahij. A sahij is someone who claps the whole time for the authority. Yeah, whether it's doing wrong or right, they are clapping. A sheep, a follower, someone who doesn't think or criticize, to run after making money, buying a flat, a car, and get married, to leave the village and move to the city, to leave farming and work in private or public sectors, to not manifest or resist, to have no empathy or feeling of justice with my people or land, to not revolt. And then he quotes the ex-prime minister of the PA when he addressed the Palestinian people, saying, do you want more watan, which is homeland, or do you want more money? Explicitly saying this to the Palestinian people, like 2 years ago. So this is the first quote. The second quote is from a Palestinian young man also, an agent, used to work, is still working as an officer in the Palestinian Authority, but used to work in the special forces that suppresses demonstrations, but no longer now. And what he says, we had like a long discussion, and then this is something he said in our conversation. He said, and I quote, "We live under a terrifying dictatorship. If I do speak out, I risk torture and beating, even more than anyone else, simply because I am the son of this or that security apparatus. I discussed with my colleagues why we are still working here after the 7th of October. Will we continue to drum the government, which means applaud the government? But why and what is the benefit? In the eyes of your people, you are a spy, collaborator with Israel. No one in Palestine does not call the sons of the authority spies. In the eyes of the people of Gaza today, you are an agent for Israel and an accomplice, despicable in every way. Man, today no one can sit with his community and tell them I work as a police officer. I swear to God, some days pass by when I tell my family I'm living in hell." And here we are talking about someone who is from the privileged, and with power and domination in the Palestinian society. And the last quote is from also the theater workshops in Ramallah, and I asked them to write what comes to their mind, the participants, when they hear the word man, just zalami, man, zalami in Arabic. And this is a sheet of paper that I found, and I believe it's written by a female participant. And she wrote violent about the Palestinian when she heard the word man. Violent, tender, aggressive, coward, fighter, responsible for others, selfish, caring. Gada, it's a form of masculinity that is very honorable and courageous. Monsters, etc. In short, to live in an existential crisis. What these three quotes are explaining a lot of the situation of young Palestinian men, especially men, in the post-Oslo period, which is full of contradictions and sometimes schizophrenic reality that Palestinian young men live in the post-Oslo period. They describe the multiple factors shaping the construction of masculinity, such as local authoritarianism, consumerist individual culture, demobilization and depoliticization policies of the PA, and particularly the attack on Palestinian men, on the psyche and the body of the Palestinian men, how to demobilize and change a society that before the arrival of the PA was revolutionist, was in the first Intifada, and then directly transform it to a consumerist one, individual one, without unity in their struggle for liberation. So, why focusing on Oslo? One second. So, why focusing on Oslo? And what we see here in the image, this is a demonstration that was happening in Ramallah almost 3 years ago, when the Palestinian Authority assassinated Nizar Banat, a Palestinian activist, for speaking out and criticizing the Palestinian Authority, and demonstration broke up. And this was just like 1 kilometer from where I am now. And it was faced with lots of repression and shooting and arresting and political arresting and torture by the Palestinian Authority. And we used to see these scenes when we talk about, or when it's in facing the Israelis. But lately we are seeing these a lot against the Palestinian Authority. So what the Oslo Accords, or the creation of the PA, created, it's a layered systems of oppression, also as Arturo mentioned before. But let's make it very clear. The PA, the direct result of the Oslo Accord, is a colonial instrument. It's a continuation of the settler colonial project, and its aim is only to deepen the structures of oppression and occupation and colonization in Palestine, to undermine the Palestinian struggle, to demobilize the Palestinian society, and to create an illusionary image of peace and state-crafting. And it's important to keep in mind that the Palestinian Authority, similar to many Arab regimes, they consider their own youth, in our case the Palestinian youth, particularly men, as the main threat to their existence. because what they see in men is the possibility of revolution against their corruption, their collaboration, and also the existence of the Israeli colonization on the land of Palestine. So it's important to keep this in mind of why the Palestinian Authority was created and the outcomes of the Oslo Accords. But also the creation of the Palestinian Authority fragmented the Palestinian society into different socioeconomic classes and fragmented the Palestinian geography into different zones of rolling and complex legal systems, and also created a distinguished dominant political and economic elite incorporated into the Israeli colonial structures, and that exists only because the Israeli colonialism is existing, and emerged to control the highest administrative and political positions. And from this point on, Palestinians' experience of living under occupation would vary from one area to another and from one socioeconomic class to another. Also, I will show, I'm sure you saw this map many times, but the Oslo Accords and the creation of the PA also fragmented and divided the West Bank and Gaza, especially the West Bank, which is also the case of my study, into three complex zones, which is our Area A under the Palestinian Authority security and administrative control, Area B, which is co-administrated, and Area C, which is the largest percentage of the space of the West Bank under the Israeli control. And also I was doing some research because I wanted to make some images in my mind. So the West Bank, the whole of the West Bank is 25% of the state of Sergipe, which is very, very small in terms of space, but is very fragmented. And as we will see later, like this very small space, it has so many contradictions in terms of geography, in terms of time, in terms of identities, in terms of everything. So the map that we see now is the outcome of the Oslo Accords, of what the Palestinian Authority, of the PLO at the time signed and the leaders signed, and this is the outcome, islands that Palestinians live in within the West Bank, yeah? And what is very important to highlight is, for example, people also fall under different legal systems, which means people in Area A hold a green ID, which is the Palestinian Authority ID. But people in East Jerusalem, they hold a blue ID issued by the Israelis. And it's stated in their ID that they are nationless, without a nation, or unidentified, their nation. Some people in Area C hold the blue ID. Some other in Area B, they hold a blue ID. But maybe in the Area A, there are refugee camps and people hold no ID. And it's the UNRWA that has the mandate. So also, post-Oslo, Palestinians are fragmented geographically, economically, and legally. And by default, each one of them would focus on their struggle against these different systems of oppression. And in addition to the spatial and geographical fragmentation, economic and political, the Oslo Accords fragmented the time and temporalities in Palestine. And I will give you an example of how even me, like I realized this just in February, like how time is fragmented in the West Bank. So I was in Jenin in February conducting my field work at the Freedom Theater in Jenin refugee camp. I spent there 2 weeks, conducted 7 workshops, 7 sessions, and each session between 4 and 5 hours. And almost every night there was invasions by the Israelis, destruction of houses, airstrikes, killing of Palestinians, but also there was resistance from the Palestinian resistance and fighters and people. And so we sleep on the sounds of bombings, and then we wake up and we go to the theater and we do the workshops. And the day before the last day, we went to the nature. I will show you pictures later on as part of the methodology, and we did walking and farming, and then no invasion happened. So I was like okay, tomorrow is going to be a good day. I prepare, okay, we're going to imagine the future and to see what alternatives we could have. Next day, it's a Thursday. I wake up 10 minutes before 10. I am at the theater, cleaning the theater, trying to receive the participants, and then alarms everywhere in the refugee camp, and we have to evacuate because there is a special forces of the Israeli army that entered and invaded the camp. So we evacuate. 3 other participants, especially females, were stuck outside the camp in a shopping mall, not able to enter the camp. Other people I didn't hear from, and 3 hours we are just like evacuating, being under like bullets and stuff. Then the Israelis leave. The coordinator of the theater calls me. Yes, Hamza, how is it going? You are going to do the workshop, yes? I said, I don't know if I want to do the workshop after all this happened. Then there is, no, you have to do the workshop. There is no negotiation. So we leave the refugee camp, we go to another place, we do the workshop. Really one of the hardest workshops in my life, very, very difficult, and made me question about what does it mean to imagine future in times of genocide and invasion. But then I leave and I want to go back to Ramallah. So if you look at the map, and if you, I don't know if you see my pointer, but do you see my pointer? Yes, okay. So Jenin is here and Ramallah is here. And in less intense times, it would take 2 hours to arrive to Ramallah from Jenin. I take the service, and it takes us 6 hours to leave to reach Ramallah because all checkpoints were closed, and we had to go. I will also show you with the pointer. So Jenin is here. We had to go around the whole West Bank next to the wall and come back from the other side of Ramallah to enter. We spent 2 hours at a Salfit checkpoint also, like dystopian, like I don't know, like very, very, yeah. I didn't comprehend all what was happening, and then I arrived to Ramallah, and life seems to be very normal. Nothing is happening. There is no invasion. There is no soldiers. There is no signs of war. And we are talking post 7th of October. This happens like a couple of months ago. And this is not to criticize my people, yeah, but there were people eating barbecue, smoking shisha, doing everything as if it was normal. And for me, I couldn't understand like the journey that I went through and the different times. Like I felt in Jenin that it was time of liberation and struggle, and also like occupation and war. And then on the way, it was like this settler colonial state that dominates the space and dominates the ways and the checkpoints and has its power imposed on us. And then I arrived to Ramallah, and then it's time of a post-colony, like with all what comes with a post-colony, with even like the gender identities that comes with a post-colony, you know? So it was like completely, yeah, an experience that opened my mind to this. And I'm here showing you my journey in a way. Yani. So this photo on the left, it's the refugee camp in the state similar to what I left. And then this photo here in the bottom, it's similar to the ways that we take to go around. And then I arrived to Ramallah by night, and then I find this. And it's like really completely different spaces, geographies, and times. So this is also another outcome of the Oslo Accords. It's that Palestinians now live in different times and different temporalities. And this has its impact on the creation of identities, of any identity. If we have different, if our times is different, then our identities are different. The rhythms of the time is different, then how do we conceive and comprehend ourselves is different. And this is happening in the West Bank. Between each city, between each village, between each enclave, people are facing different systems of oppression, different legal statuses. They have their own struggles, and they live on their own time and temporality, which fragments the whole Palestinian society. Okay, so how do all of this impact masculinities? Like we have all of this in our mind. It manifests it manifests in two primary ways. First of all, if we go back to this big map. The first way it manifests itself is that each zone, each area, each enclave, each city, each village, it has its own masculine registers and models. So the masculinities in Jenin are different from those in Nablus, are different from those in Ramallah. The hierarchies between these masculinities are different. How do these masculinities interact between each other are different. We could find similar masculinities in the whole West Bank, but we could have very location-specific masculinities. For example, we could have in Jenin the Muqawim or Mutarad, which is the resistance fighter, the Gada, which is the courageous and the honorable. We could have the Mukhayyamji, the camp dweller, the Muhtaram also, which is the respectable or someone that is calm in a way. And those are the most honored or valued. We could have the Fafitant, which is the effeminate in the society's eyes, or how do they explain it. We could have also the apathetic, but those comes in the bottom, and also men of the authority and sons of the authority that are related to the Palestinian authority. And those come at the bottom of the continuum, if you look at it, or at the bottom of the line of the hierarchy. But when we go to Ramallah, the whole continuum, the whole dimension shifts. And then the men of the authority and the sons of the authority, they becomes the most honorable, the most dominating forms of masculinities. Then we have new forms like NGO workers, apathetic comes in a very high rate. Then Fafi and Tandin comes in a very high rate also. So different masculinities for different location and different space within the same West Bank. But it doesn't end here. This, for me, it's like obvious, or like it's common, like different places, there were different economies, they have different identities. But if we look at this map here, this is the map of Ramallah and Al-Bire. Yes, so this is Ramallah here, this is Al-Bire. What separates Ramallah and Al-Bire is this street that makes, or it's just a street. What we see in red, those are Israeli military zones. In blue, those are settlements surrounding Ramallah. We have here Al-Am'ari refugee camp, Qaddura refugee camp, Kufr Aqab, which is an area C, and we have Qalandia camp, also refugee camp. All of this in less than, 50 meters square or 100 meters square. Like all of these areas, they are entangled and within like the spaces of each other. So if we have the first thing in mind, that each enclave has its own masculinities. If we look at this map, we have a refugee camp, we have an area C, we have Ramallah, we have Al-Bire. All of them, they have their own registers of masculinities and hierarchies. But Palestinian men and young men and youth, they move. So people from Al-Am'ari refugee camp, they go to Ramallah and they go to Al-Bire, and people from Ramallah, they go to area C, and from area C they move. And the thing that is revealed, and I will read another quote, that Palestinian men tend to change their performance, their whole masculine performance, the minute they step out of these enclaves. So when they wake up in the refugee camp, they wake up as a refugee camp dweller, as a Mukhayyamji, but then when they step in Ramallah, which could be like 2 meters from their house, they tend to change their voice, their way of walking or talking, the way they count things, the way they speak, everything, so that they cope, survive, or dominate the other place. And this is happening in all the spaces. And what this is making me think that within the Palestinian male body, there are 5, 6, 7, 8 forms of masculinities or types of masculinities that are just juggling, and they come up in a different moment of time and location. So because this whole complex reality that we live in, and I will read a quote from a Palestinian adolescent that when I did an interactive focus group, and this is what they said. This is what he said when I asked, "What do you think about when you hear the word zalame, man?" And he said the following: "Let me tell you, I lived in the Jalazon refugee camp. If you go there, for example, and to similar places, The Zalame is supposed to be the one who confronts the military and throws rocks, the one who smokes and stays outside all the time. But if you come to Ramallah, for example, because he changes where he lived, they will tell you, as my father did with me, that the Zalame has responsibilities and cares for himself and his father and his future here. The Zalame goes to school and is someone reasonable and modernized. So it is different from one location to another. And within end of quote. And within Jenin group, we were in a break, and one participant, out of nowhere, he was telling me, man, I completely feel myself changing once I enter the refugee camp. It's completely different from when I am at the university or from when I am in Tulkarem, my city. So it tends that even Palestinians now are aware of this in a way or another, if they can articulate it or not, but they are aware of the changes in their performance, in their embodying of their masculinities based on the location. So those are some of the masculinities that I mentioned before: NGO worker, peacemaker, terrorist, men of the authority, son of the authority, apathetic, sahij, and maybe there are 20 more that I identified during my fieldwork, which like it's a cosmology of masculinities that exists within the West Bank. Okay, so we go to the third thread, and with this I end. About the methodological engagement and use of theater in Palestine. So with all what I explained now, with all this complexity of geographies, temporalities, identities, how could we have a grasp in all of this? How could we understand how all of these factors impact the construction of masculinities? And for me, theater seemed the optimal, because it is in theater that we can bring all of these different geographies, all of these different temporalities, and constructions of masculinities in one space, in one place, which is the stage of the theater or the workshop space. And people in my workshops, they came from all over Palestine, historic Palestine. There were people from Hebron, Jerusalem, Nazareth, Jenin, Ramallah, from everywhere. And when they come with all their identities, location-specific attitudes, everything. So everyone is gathered once again. And also it's a challenge for the imposed colonial fragmentation on us when we come all together and unite. So this is first. The second point is that in the theater, I also used a lot of theater of the oppressed philosophy and techniques and community theater. And what is important, for example, in the theater of the oppressed, something called SECs, which is to move from the individual to the collective, from the collective to the individual. Because we could live under occupation and colonization, but it doesn't mean that we understand or comprehend this reality, or that we can point out or we can say how much my experience is similar to yours or to someone else when we are living this reality. So what also this workshops did is that always linking between the individual experience and the collective experience, creating a consciousness, which is the first step toward change and toward action and movement in the society. Yeah? So this is the second point why I used theater. Also, in these workshops, we did lots of role play and embodying different forms and registers of masculinities. So the participants had the opportunity to perform and play different masculinities of theirs, to empathize with these masculinities, to sympathize, to understand why are these people acting like this, what is their background, which is also, again, creates another unity within the Palestinian society that now sees itself, the Palestinians are othering the other Palestinians the whole time. So it's, again, to create another sense of unity and collectiveness. And in addition to the theater, and we could also elaborate more on theater and the use of theater in the conversation and questions. In addition to using theater to create consciousness and also change, I did some, so those are pictures. I did some land walks, hiking, also farming, and workshops for imagination. And why I insisted on using land and going back to the land, because we cannot understand gender identities or masculine construction of identities of colonized and settler colonized people without understanding what does it mean, the dispossession of land on these identities. Because for indigenous people, land, it's the place that from where traditions, cultures, gender norms and roles and everything arises. And it changes us when we are in the city or when we are close to the nature. And here I will say two stories, and then with this I will conclude the talk. With the Jenin group, there was this same person who told me that whenever they enter the camp, they change. They tend always to be hyper-masculine, overdoing their masculinity, aggressive, not able to talk with girls, this kind of masculinity, yeah? But once we entered into the mountain, we started being there, their whole personality changed. They became more tender, more able to speak with female participants. Their voice, how they walk, everything. It was as I'm meeting a completely different person in nature. And he was laying down between flowers and saying poetry, and like it was crazy the changes that happened and occurred to him. And when at the end of the day we were discussing, like debriefing on the day, he told me something that is still in my mind, and I need to go more in deep in this like words. He said, "Wait for me to go back to the asphalt." And really, the moment that the car touched the asphalt and his foot touched the asphalt, he changed completely again and became the same aggressive, hyper-masculine person. And this is making me like wonder, what does this in post-colonial cities with its fragmentations and its limitations imposing on Palestinian men in terms of violence, in terms of expectations, in terms of many different things. So this is one story also on the impact of using land and walking as a theater, as a methodology with theater, because land came at the end of the theater workshops after deconstructing so many ideas and role plays and so on and so forth. So the participants were ready to go into another adventure. The second thing with which I will end is with the Ramallah group. We went farming in a farm nearby Ramallah called Sulaiman, and they spent the whole day cultivating, farming, and doing different stuff, agriculture stuff. And so they said this was a very nice day, but what is important is and also what you see here, this picture when they are imagining a future Palestinian community that is working towards liberation and has all the resources that is needed. And what these, when I asked them after they finished constructing their own community, what do you think about gender roles in this space? They said, we think this is for granted. And I said, what do you mean by for granted? They said, one of them, and it was a man, he said, last week we went to the farm and we all worked in the farm, and there was no separation between men and women, and we all did the same work. So we think now in the future there will be no division. And because in this, what you see also in the photo, they did watchtowers and they have schools and they have different forms of schools and they have farms and lands. So from one day going farming and going back to the roots of our existence and from where our traditions and our culture arises, it shifts the understanding. And this brings me to conclude that also my main objective for this research is to have instant impact on my participants, that my research participants are the ones that gain the most of this experience. They are the ones who are able to identify the oppressive regimes, what their impact is on them, and also what are the tools to change. And that change within Palestinian men, even in times of genocide and even in times of war, is possible, and men are part of the solution. They are not the problem. Yes, and with this, I conclude, and sorry if it was too long.
Well, thank you, Hamza. It was amazing. It was a great presentation. I think Geraldo fell. Well, he'll come back probably soon. Thank you, Hamza. Wow, I have so many questions, but we don't have much time. Probably we'll have more opportunities to talk. So I will ask you, the first question that I will ask you is, you receive people from 48, right? People from Nazareth, from other places. Probably you never worked with someone from Gaza, I imagine.
Yeah, some people were originated, their families come from Gaza, but not from Gaza.
Okay, so because from what I got also, when at the end of your presentation, you're trying to put together some kind of, like, you're understanding a possibility of future, right?
Yes.
And so, but also how the spaces, these fragmented places, and how this relates to gender identities also work as obstacles, right? Because one time in Palestine, I used to go to the Jordan Valley, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these Palestinians in Al-Jiflik, he told me, people from Ramallah, they don't come.
Mm-hmm.
You came from Brazil, but people from Ramallah, right? Yeah. And so this is one aspect, like an obstacle which we can relate to class, to the settler colonial structure, to gender. Yeah. And the other question, you touch a little bit on that. So Ramallah is this post. I love what you said, the post-colonial hub in Occupy West Bank. But as also you said, a lot of people, they work in Ramallah. They're from Nablus. They sometimes even from Jenin. They sleep in Jenin. They live in Jenin, but they go to work in Ramallah. Yeah. How is this? The spaces also are obstacles, and how do you see that? And I mentioned the 48 Palestinians because also, right, I was in Haifa, and sometimes even they can, I mean, the Palestinians, they have obstacles to go because of a military law and other things, but they can go to the Occupy West Bank, right?
Yeah.
So how the spaces work as obstacles for the Palestinians, imaginary or even practical, concrete obstacles?
Yeah. A very, very good question. And this I could relate to when we were doing the Imagining the Future, which is the last workshop of the theater sessions. And it was always very hard to imagine an alternative of what is imposed on Palestinians now. Or always imagination is related to the past. So when we think about our future, it's about going back to the past of the 1948, as if there were no Israeli occupation and colonization and settlement and construction and walls and everything and change in landscape. So which is very problematic, but also Nadira Shalhoub-Kovarkin speaks about this, which is the occupation of the senses. When the occupation, it does not only occupy your the space or the geography, but also occupies your mind and occupies your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? And everything. And this was this imposed settler colonial fragments of the Palestinian, also on Palestinian movement. That's why people from Ramallah, they don't go to Jiflit, because in the mind of the Palestinians, it's very risky. There's checkpoints, it's very long. So it's making distances being exaggerated because we always need to go around different roads because we cannot go directly. So this is important now in the work to be done, is how to reconnect Palestinians to their land, how to reconnect them to each other. And that's why I mentioned that Palestinians are othering each other because they are not meeting each other and because they are not seeing each other, not talking each other. Each one is imprisoned, because also Walid Daqqa, a Palestinian prisoner who also died in prison and his body is still captive, said that there are 6 distinct geographies within Palestine, and all of us are living in open air prisons, and everything is restricted, but we are just in a larger prison, and this impacts, as I talked and mentioned, the way people perceive each other, the way they perceive themselves, gender identities, and also, for example, to come back to your what you mentioned, people, when they come from Jenin to work in Ramallah, they face a whole complete reality, and they have to change and adapt their identities and their way of being and their beliefs and their even religiousness to the context of Ramallah. And then when they go back with a different identity, another identity. And I had an interview with a Palestinian who was from Al-Izari, which is an area C next to Jerusalem, and lives in Ramallah. And he told me that what he do in Ramallah cannot do in Al-Izari, because it's a complete different area and complete different space. And also his identity, his gender identity is different from when he is in Ramallah than when he is in Al-Izari. So this is it's the result of settler colonialism. It's the result of the occupation. It's the result of the PA. And what we have to do is to find ways to overcome these fragments. Yeah.
Hamza, I'm sorry, my computer here, I had a problem, so I'm entering by the phone now. Thank you so much, Hamza. Thank you so much for your talk. And it was extremely provocative in many aspects. And I'd like to ask you about, because your research makes me think about the process of production of subjectivities under colonial rule.
Yes.
So how is this fragmentation as a very particular process of production of subjectivities within colonization, and particularly in this case, within colonization, genocide and apartheid. I mean, in this kind of very, very singular combination of systems. And as you said, not only one system of apartheid, but like multiple coexistent systems of apartheid and oppressions. So my question is related to the issue of temporalities.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask you to, if you please can elaborate a little bit more on this, as you said, the multiple temporalities within this experience of fragmentation, in terms of this process of production of subjectivities.
Yeah. I think we could refer, there is a Palestinian intellectual I also mentioned now. His name is Walid Daqqa, and he spent 39 years in Israeli prisons until his martyrdom, and his body is still captive. And he theorized a lot about time, and he calls the time in prison as a parallel time. And there is a social time which is happening outside the prison, and there is a parallel time that is happening inside the prison, and where the prisoners themselves, they become the time, because the space is not moving, so you become one with the time. And also talks about control by time, that the occupation and the colonization of the Israeli, he also provokes us to not use apartheid, settler colonialism, all of this, because what the Israelis are doing is beyond. Like, he talks about political extermination a lot, but like it's even beyond, you know. And he says that what also they created as a tool of domination is the control by time, and it's to make each distinct place follows that time follows a different rhythm and a different context, and means different things for different people. And by this, you define the Palestinian people, and you define the creation of their identity. And that's bring us to Ramallah. The speed of and the progress of what's so-called development in NGOs and NGOizations of Palestine and everything, it's happening 10 times faster than what is happening in Hebron or what is happening in Jenin. So people here, they experience different reality because they are ahead maybe not ahead, maybe they are backward, but they went in a different direction of time, while other people in other places, they might be stuck in time, or they might be in a slow, I also don't like linearity of time, but their rhythm is different from the other place, yeah. And this is also, again, used by the occupation, because now the Palestinian people, they don't move like a one body, like a one occupied body, because there are these different socioeconomic classes. Everybody experiences occupation in a different level. So you could live in Ramallah your whole life and you would not meet a soldier, but you could live in Hebron and meet a soldier each morning, you know. So these different temporalities, they create different identities within Palestinians. The outcome is different Palestinians living in Palestine. So yeah, this is like briefly, but this, I'm newly also entering this notion of temporality and how it is impacting the Palestinian identity and how it could reflect on the construction of masculinities. And I'm going to dig more and more in it. But yeah, so this is where I am now.
Thank you, Hamza. Hamza, I will ask you a question from a viewer. Yeah. Her name is Angel Mendes, and she's asking if you could verify, how do you see the impact of Western conceptions of masculinities, right? If they end up being positive, or if they serve as another form of oppression within Palestinians. And I would just add, because I would ask you that, so I'll take this as this question from Angel, because you don't mention internationals, because they're living in Jerusalem and Ramallah and Bethlehem. So this Angel made a very good question. How do you see these Western conceptions of masculinities and their impact?
Yes, it's a very, very important question, and I think there is many scholars in South Africa, especially a scholar called Ratley, who writes a lot about indigenous masculinities and how to liberate masculinity studies from the Western imposition of the Western hegemony over knowledge and masculinities and these kinds of theories, and also writes that the imposition of so-called Western modernized whatever masculinities, they tend to make indigenous people or local people more reserved, or they tend to make people more violent or different, like, because it becomes like identities in tension, because you have what Palestinians traditionally are, or their identities, their beliefs, their religions, and then you have something imposed. And when we say by imposed, it comes back to the NGOization. You have this mainstreaming of gender and NGOs that comes with their own agenda, imposing whatever kinds of agenda on Palestinians in terms of gender and masculinities, and forcing Palestinians to adapt to these kinds and registers and models of Western masculinities without an organic development of these or change. So this is the tension of what is happening in Palestine. And also, for example, discourses of hegemonic masculinities, they were used a lot by the Israelis to justify land dispossession by saying that the Palestinians are retarded or violent or barbaric or whatsoever, and violent and patriarchal and so on, in face or like in contrast to the Israeli colonizer that is calm, that is modernized, that is civilized. And these also, again, Western terminologies, they again impose or like empower the colonization in Palestine. And the thing, again, with also internationals or Western ideas or masculinities, that it comes not organically. And it comes in times where Palestinian identity is on threat. And when your identity is threatened, you tend to hold to it. you tend not wanting it to change, especially when you have a white colonizer, because let's not forget that the Israelis are white settlers, and they come with these Western masculinities, and they come with these Western ideals. And when they are here and you are faced with this existential threat, you tend to refuse all of this. And when you see it happening in your society, it will engender violence and tensions between these different kinds of masculinities, because you don't want to be like your colonizers anyway. So, yeah.
Thank you, Hamza. So we don't have any questions, so I will make another one. I don't know if you saw that, and that's really a question, because if the Intifada, I mean the Intifada, the first one in 87, if there is a myth about it, about two things. First, community, because you correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of the first Intifada was something about a popular levant, a popular revolt, and the society, the whole society in the occupied territories were involved. And the other thing that a lot of studies talk about is about the gender factor in the Intifada. I mean, the women were really important. I mean, they are always important, but in the Intifada, they took more important roles. In the Intifada. If in your field work, this comes as a myth of a future, an example of the past that can be replicated in the future.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very, very important also question, because it's a dream to go back to the Intifada, and also I build a lot when I theorize on post-Oslo masculinities, because it tended that within 4 or 5 years, the Palestinian community was really working as a community, and men, women, and even in songs and films and poetry and everything, men and women were on the front line, throwing rocks, facing the Israeli soldiers, having different but very important roles in the Intifada. At one point in the 1989, 1990s, the ones who were leading the Intifada were women inside the occupied territories. So the role was they had this very, very important role. And once the Palestinian Authority arrived, and also there's a film called Naila and the Uprising. I don't know if you watched it, but it's very, very important. She says, and the woman says that we were fighting against the Israeli occupation, and once the Palestinian Authority came, we started going in demonstrations against the Palestinian Authority that is stripping us from our rights. So, and it's a dream to go back to this time of the first Intifada, but the whole circumstances are different, especially with the creation of the Palestinian Authority, when you have this ruling body that claims to be the representative of the Palestinian society, and that takes control and repress, torture, and imprison Palestinians for any kind of activism, and that is funded by a neoliberal, imperialist, white supremacist agenda that is also pushing different kinds of gender norms, and also of consumerist and individualistic approaches to life, which was also revealed a lot by my fieldwork. That now I remember one nice story. I did an exercise with the participants that we move in the theater and in the space, and once they go to their grandparents' time and they embody their grandma or grandfather and they write something, and then they go to their parents' time and then they come to their current time. And in these texts, you can see there was one female participant. She wrote, "My grandparents were living with their families, everybody was happy, and like this community life." Then it comes to their parents. My parents, they lived a little bit with their grandparents, but my mother didn't want to be with her mother-in-law, so they went to another city and they started living there. And then she comes to herself and says, "I wish I could leave and live in a place where no one knows me." And this is what happened in the Palestinian society. In short, the Oslo period, it completely turned Palestinians into individuals living individually in this fragmented space. But again, circumstances are different, and we should learn from the Intifada, but there is a different model that should come, because what we are facing now is completely different, and the ways of being collective should be different to meet these challenges and circumstances.
Hamza, if I may, I just something that it's very interesting. Like you've been working with the theater of oppressed, and thinking of, I mean, Teatro do Oprimido, of course, Augusto Boal, and the Brazilian experience of the theater of oppressed with the Brazilian social movements, and the popular movements and the rural movements, etc. Also, so and I know that we have been talking before also about the influence of the theater of the oppressed in Palestine, the exchange, and it would be interesting to hear a little bit more how the history of the theater of oppressed in Palestine, and this relation with also the Brazilian experience of the theater of oppressed.
Yeah. So I think also like exchanges between, there's a theater in Palestine called Ishtar Theater, and they are in partnership with the Theater of the Oppressed Center, also in Rio de Janeiro, I think, or in Sao Paulo. And since maybe 20, 30 years, they are working with the methodology of Augusto Boal, and what they do is forum theater mainly, most of the time. And at a certain time, it was very empowering and successful. But now, also with me working with the Theater of the Oppressed, I think we should also come to a point of creating or developing our own way of working with the Theater of the Oppressed. Because the Theater of the Oppressed, it comes with the specificities of the Brazilian context, and also of the Latin American context, and also of the Latin American people and the colonized people over there. And similar to not bring just methodologies and concepts and work with them in Palestine, also is the same with the Theater of the Oppressed. So I am also a co-founder of Laween Theatre Initiative, and we are so inspired by the Theater of the Oppressed, but we try always to manipulate with it in ways that works for us. For example, we don't have a joker. The joker is a secret actor or actress within the audience that comes at a time where we need a conversation. We do round the theater, and we give people papers and pencils to write and then speak up when they want, at the times that they want, because it's not easy for Palestinians to come on stage and perform, for example, as it's done in forum theater, as it's was done. So the philosophy is very important, I think, of the Theater of the Oppressed, and the way it's working in creating change, empowering people to move, to take action. I think this is what is very important also for Palestinians, and also to reveal the different structures of oppression in the ways also that Augusto Boal and the Theater of Oppressed working, but we should also adapt it again to the Palestinian context and how Palestinians deal with their challenges, and how, for example, if it's not through bodily gestures, maybe it's through writing, maybe it's through singing, maybe it's through different forms that the audience or the spectators, as it's in the Theater of the Oppressed, can take part in the theater. I know also of different initiatives that they did in visible theater. In Ramallah, it's a theater called Basta, and they went and they were like selling clothes, like pretending to sell clothes at Al-Manara, and then making fun of the police officers over there, of the PA. So the methodology and the different techniques were used, but mainly adapted for the Palestinian context.
Well, Hamza, I think it was great to talk to you. I think we can wrap it up here, finish. I know it's late. You were so kind to talk to us, and we'll sure have other opportunities. Thank you very much, Hamza. So this was the online talk we had. It was part of the Palestine Week. Thank you so much for everyone on the chat and everyone that was listening and watching us. And follow the Instagram of CEAI, and we have more news and and events there.
Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Arturo.
And thank you also to Tabla, the publishing house, for this partnership. It's once again a pleasure. And also it's been just to say that it's just being published, a new translation, a translation of a book of Kanafani, with the translation has been made by one of our members, founding members of our center, Ahmed Zogbi. So this, I just also leave the note here for people to search for the translations of Palestinian literature and Palestinian poetry here, and especially for the Brazilian audience now, for this new novel has just been published, O Que Lhes Restou, by Hassan Kanafani. So it's also an invitation for getting to know more about Palestinian literature and Palestinian thought. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Hamza.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and looking forward to continue our conversations. Thank you. See you. Good night. Bye-bye.